Hello and welcome, everyone. We're back today again on a 5th of March, Sabbath day, 2022, to discuss what does the Bible tell us about conspiracies. And Michael, I know myself from doing my own reading and study of the Bible that the Bible goes into great details on what was, what is, and what is to come. So here we are on session 14. Welcome, Michael.
Welcome, Brad, and hello to listeners. Yes, I think that in the very first sessions of this series, we have extremely went into the biblical history. And of course, the book of Revelation, for example, also depicts conspiracies of the kings of the world together with the whore who sitteth above many waters, or among many waters. Pardon my English. But in between, as we are stuck on this earth and this existence, I chose the example of your assassinated king, so to speak, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, as an example to point out where is the relationship between the kings of the world and the whore who's sitting among many waters, well, amidst many waters. So therefore, this is here the next upcoming session of John F. Kennedy, the assassination, from a biblical, from a religious, and from another perspective, and not from the perspective who did it, because you see that who did it is by far more not that interesting than for what purpose did it happen, what was the reason, and who ordered it, because that is my main concern. Who did it is just a measly example or a character of somebody who gets rewarded by doing some criminal action. For example, if you hand over somebody a big amount of money, many people will then kill other people or harm any people and steal things, etc. But that's not the intention of the thing. You see, that is just the one who's ordering the assassination, the one who is behind it, the mastermind. That's what is interesting. So that we can prove on that very example of JFK that the Bible is absolutely spot on when it comes down to conspiracies, and absolutely spot on when it comes down to the connection of church and state, because that's what actually happened in the assassination of your 35th president. So this is the next session 14. In last session, we went on to naming the last session the President of the Century, because it's just 100 years exactly between the election of Lincoln and Kennedy, and between the successor, who also happened to be 100 years apart from that, Lincoln's successor, Andrew Johnson, and Kennedy's successor, also named Johnson, but Lyndon Johnson. Interesting. And there are so many similarities that if you know, and we have explained that last session, that there was a Roman Catholic background in the assassination of your President Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, then you see that it's very strange, because there are some very strange not coincidences. For example, that Lincoln was shot in a theater and fled, and the assassin fled to a warehouse, and Oswald shot Kennedy from a warehouse and fled to a theater. And it was a cinema, I know, but cinemas are also theaters. So this is very interesting if you compare all the things. Yeah. And so we will go on in the research. Let me point out some things that I have found and some things that I think make much sense when you compare that to these both victims and to American history. Because Abraham Lincoln said that the American Civil War would never have been possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits, being the Roman Catholic Church, or the military organization of the church. We owe it to Popery that we now see our land reddened with the blood of her noble sons. Abraham Lincoln, assassinated 1865. And of course, this is just a repetition of last session, 50 years in the Church of Rome, Charles Chiniquy. Yeah, so I will skip it to the point where now the next session, the research for the next session, will start. Don't fall for documentaries. The problem with documentaries is they set a path for you to follow, and they will do that very, very, very intelligent with the music, with scripts, with things popping up. And this is a very sophisticated documentary, but it is very much not the truth. For example, this is JFK to 9/11, everything's a rich man's trick. Yeah, but who's the rich man? You see that he's accusing the Nazis. But yeah, that's the problem with it. That's the problem with it. So don't fall for that. We know that John F. Kennedy mentioned a monolithic conspiracy, and this monolithic conspiracy is the Roman Catholic Church. Yeah, and all the people working for the Roman Catholic Church. For example, this Reinhard Gehlen, who happened to be together with the Walpole Donovan to found the CIA, the runner-up of the OSS. And this Gehlen also was one of the most powerful men in Europe. His agents operated in the United States, England, France, and the Middle East, and Israel's Mossad. Yeah, and he was busy for different countries. And as original, he was a Nazi general. Yeah, so he's just exchanging uniforms, but the mental thing which is driving him, the spirit which is driving him, is absolutely the same. That's the satanic spirit, and this is Reinhard Gehlen. Yeah, from the book Spies, a narrative encyclopedia of dirty deeds and double dealing from biblical ties to today. This is a very interesting combination of words. Maybe that's also a very interesting book for you to read if you are going down that path. Because your beloved president has been set up as an idol on several places around the world. Yeah, but I find it very sad that John F. Kennedy best is remembered for being shot, yeah, and not remembered for his politics. And after all the intensive research that I did, I think that he was one of the few presidents who really wanted to do something for the people and not for the, how to say that, not for the government or not for the elite. Yeah, so just for the people. But you see, that's not that what the elite or the government is trying to allow. So once again.
Yeah, Michael, I think to sum it up really quick, what happens here in the United States specifically with politics is they want you to be the best double speaker there ever could be. So what you do is you fool the people, you tell them, you know, promise them everything, plus the kitchen sink, and then deliver nothing but lies and just completely deceive everyone. And everyone just goes, oh, well, he tried his best, you know, he couldn't, you know, like all the other presidents, he couldn't get past the bureaucracy or whatever, you know, just double dealing. That's what they do.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely in line with that. And I want to point out that when I'm doing JFK on the biblical channel, I'm going into the religious aspect of JFK. I'm doing it I'm doing it totally different from the majority of any documentaries out there, because if I would do so, that would be a total waste of time. I want to hand over valuable, interesting information. And we will have so many circumstantial evidence in the later sessions that I think you won't find that on the internet usually. So I hope that we really can go into JFK as an example. But at the time of the assassination on the 22nd of November 1963, it happened in Dallas. And who were the governor there of Texas, because Dallas happens to be in Texas. And governor means a personal keeper, protector, or guide, so-called a ruler. And the former governor of Texas was a certain Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ. Yeah, he was the governor in Texas from 1949 to 1968 in the United States Senate. And he was the one who was profiting from the assassination of Kennedy, as you see here. He was sworn in about 2 hours and 10 minutes later. And he was the vice president, and then he became president. Interesting to know Yeah, you see, this is the deceased president, and this is Lyndon B. Johnson. And he did not swear on the Bible, but you're not supposed to swear on the Bible anyway. So you only see by that picture here that somebody swears to take an oath. It is absolutely unbiblical. And it is also a confirmation of the session we did before, or some sessions before, on 1 Samuel 7. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 7-8, that all these kings are pagan rulers. Do not serve the God, but people want to be governed and ruled as the pagans. Yeah? Therefore, they do everything to contradict the Bible. And there's much more to come. As I said, the king will be killed. But what many people won't know is this gem that I found. Look at this. In the Catholic News Archive, on the issue of 20th October 1961, so during the presidency of John F. Kennedy, when Lyndon Baines Johnson was vice president 2 years before the assassination, it says, "Honor to Lyndon Johnson, Malta Knight. Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson was presented with the Grand Cross of the Order of the Knights of Malta in recognition to his humanitarian efforts throughout the world." The award was also presented to Senator Kenneth B. Keating of New York and to Henry Cabot Lodge, former head of the United States delegation to the United Nations. Both were honored for their peace and social aid efforts. End of the message. So when they sell you Lyndon B. Johnson as a Protestant president, they don't tell you that he was knighted as a Knight of Malta during the presidency of John F. Kennedy. So that is what is really going on behind the curtain. So you got so-called representatives of the state, or you saw so-called politicians, but also Lyndon B. Johnson is a Knight of Malta, Alan Dulles is a Knight of Malta. So many people are knights around that, and you see, knight means that you owe your service to the papacy. That is such important find here.
Yes, it is, Michael.
Many people who have spoken about the assassination of Kennedy heard a very strange death. For example, here is an example of Dorothy May Kilgallen. Dorothy May Kilgallen was a reporter. I'm going into the English script. Now we will handle Lyndon B. Johnson extensively because there's so much going on when it comes down to his ties to the Roman Catholic Church. So this very Dorothy May Kilgallen was an American columnist, journalist, and television game show panelist. And she wrote front-page articles for multiple newspapers on the Sam Shepard trial, and years later, events related to the John F. Kennedy assassination, such as testimony by Jack Ruby, the guy who was supposed to have killed the main suspect of Lee Harvey Oswald. The Sam Shepard murder trial. Kilgallen covered the 1954 murder trial of Sam Shepard, a doctor convicted of killing his wife at the home in the Cleveland suburb of Bay Village. The New York Journal American carried the banner front page headline that Kilgallen was astounded by the guilty verdict because of what she argued were serious flaws in the prosecution's case. At the time of the Cleveland's jury guilty verdict in December 1954, Kilgallen's sharp criticism of it was controversial, and the Cleveland newspaper dropped her column in response. Her articles and columns in 1954 did not reveal all she had witnessed in the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. 9 years after the verdict and sentence, and after the judge had died, she claimed at an event held as Overseas Press Club in New York that the judge had told her before the start of the jury selection that Shepard was, quote, guilty as hell, unquote. Attorney F. Lee Bailey, who was working on the habeas corpus petition for his client Shepard, attended the Overseas Press Club event, heard what Kilgallen told the crowd, and then asked her privately if she would help him. Some days later, as Bailey wrote in his memoir, The Defense Never Rests, we obtained a deposition from Dorothy that was inserted into the petition submitted to Carl Andrew Weinman, judge from the United States District Court for the Southern District of Ohio. Bailey also included in the habeas corpus petition a statement from Edward Murray, who had worked in 1954 as a court clerk at the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. Similar to Kilgallen's statement, Murray's statement indicated that Edward J. Blythen, the original Shepard judge, has said that Shepard was guilty even before the grand jury indicted him on August 17, 1954. In July 1964, 4 months after the Overseas Press Club event where Kilgallen broke her silence about the deceased Judge Blythen, Judge Weinman of the federal court granted Bailey's habeas corpus petition. Sam Shepard was released from prison amid much newspapers publicity, and Shepard met Kilgallen at a late-night champagne party in Cleveland. After Kilgallen's death, Shepard was retried and acquitted. So she was very much into justice. Kilgallen was publicly skeptical of the conclusions of the Warren Commission's report about the assassination of President Kennedy and Jack Ruby's shooting of Lee Oswald, and she wrote several newspapers articles on the subject. On February the 23rd, 1964, she published an article in the New York Journal American about a conversation she had with Jack Ruby when he was at his defense table during a recess in his murder trial. She also obtained a copy of Ruby's June 7, 1964 testimony to the Warren Commission, which she published in August 1964 in 3 installments on the front pages of the New York Journal American, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, and other newspapers. Circumstances undetermined, unquote. Her funeral mass took place on November the 11th, 9/11, at St. Vincent Ferrer. John Daly, Arlen Francis, Betty White, Ed Sullivan, Joseph E. Levine, and Bob Considine were among the 2,600 people attending. She was interred at Gate of Heaven Cemetery in Hawthorne, New York, in Westchester County. So her interview has not been published until this very day, if I remember correctly. So there are many people who died a strange death. And she was interviewing Jack Ruby, who was supposedly responsible for the killing of Lee Harvey Oswald. But you will be surprised in later sessions what's all about with that event as well. Yeah. So many sources also say that her death has a connection to the big blackout in New York, which happened on the 9th of November 1965. Yeah, well, that was the day of her funeral, wasn't it? Huh? So you have many people, many researchers, and I can only advise you to be very carefully and be very cautious of any documentation, because you don't know if these people are insiders. You don't know what the attitude of these people is, and they put you in your face some interesting information, but many of that is totally distraction. Yeah, it's totally distraction. As you're mixing up everything. You won't never find any documentary on a mainstream channel who goes about the background of the killing of JFK. Never, ever. Yeah, well, people are the majority of people on the Broadway only interested in the killing. The majority of people only interested in gossip, yellow press, and sex rumors, etc. So many people are more interested in Marilyn Monroe than in the assassination of John F. Kennedy, it seems. Yeah. You see that I don't suspect anybody who killed Marilyn Monroe. What I'm convinced of is that it was not a natural death, happened at the age of 36, I think it was. Yeah, many people think it was the brother of John F. Kennedy, because also he was alleged to have an affair with her. But that is not the headline. This is not the big thing when it comes down to JFK. He was not killed because he was killed for other reasons. So you can go endlessly in discussions, endlessly, and people will get it from books. People will look upon that because people are fascinated with the story of Monroe. But it is just only that people don't want you to follow the truth. Yeah. So before we go into the date of the 22nd and what happened there, because many people only focus on the around 30 seconds on this Zapruder movie. We have to go back to the background to see what's what and especially who's who. So, numbers, dates, and facts. This is only interesting. You can fool anybody with statistics. Really? You see, here is a statistic that just happened by accident. Total cases, 290 million. Total deaths, 5 million. Total doses, 9 billion. So what does the total doses have to do with the deaths? What does the total cases have to do with the total doses? You see, there are some things missing here. For example, the total amount of people. Yeah, so you can lie with statistics.
Is this Johns Hopkins University?
Yeah, by the way.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have to be a Jesuit college, would it? No.
Do your own research. Yeah, but you see, you can lie with statistics. If nobody tells you the amount of the alleged amount, we do not know for certain, yeah, of people who happen to be 7.8 billion, yeah, then the number of total deaths made absolutely no sense because that seems to be a large number. But compared to the amount or to the large number of the inhabitants of the earth, it's just 0.7%. And then you don't have also, you're missing the next fact and the duration, the period of time. Is it in 1 month? Is it 1 year? Is it since the beginning of the crisis or what? So even that 0.7% is absolutely futile to go in there because you don't know the amount of time. You see, lying with statistics. Statistics. Let's look up what he's got to say about it. Yeah, there's he. Very interesting individual. You see that this is a line of his most favorite books, and on top of that is a small book. It's called How to Lie with Statistics. Yeah. What if we lie with statistics with immunity? You see. You can create your own sentence with the line of books.
Michael, question for you.
Yeah.
Would Bill Gates be Jesuit influenced?
Is there anybody who is
that the principles of the Jesuits is, pretty in line with what's going on here with this crisis?
Oh, the end justifies the means. Is there anybody who is successful, who is important, who is influential, and who is filthy rich, who is not Jesuitically trained?
Michael, the people, if they haven't read or understood how the extreme oath of the Jesuits came about, how are they going to understand anything about what role the Jesuit order plays in society today? You have to read and study on your own, independently of this channel and other channels. You have to understand that this is something incredibly controversial. And of course, it's going to be rejected by most people. And you know why? Because they're reliant on their Jesuit training for their paycheck.
Yeah.
For their paycheck. Isn't it obvious?
Yeah, they're being rewarded for serving the beast.
Their obedience to mammon, Michael.
Yeah, you can only serve God or the mammon.
Yeah. Let's say
Yeah,
it like it
that's
is. Let's break it down for you.
Clue
Look, he's
meaning...
got such a nice smile on his face. He couldn't hurt anyone now, could he? No.
You see that you have to really read the people, and you have to really read symbolism. And this is the book on top. You see that this is the first one is coming up is lying with statistics. And then later comes immunity. Isn't that interesting? But you see that it's just randomly, huh? Yeah, absolutely. It's randomly. And it has nothing to do so far with the killing of Kennedy, but just want to point it out. You see that you can fool the people with names and dates and facts, but you have to do it in the right way. But if you do it here, which I did on the 3rd of January this year, 2022, you see this is absolutely BS. You cannot get any valuable information about it. You only see the green number here, 9.2 million doses, and you know, oh, somebody's making money big time. Somebody's making money big time. Huh? Somebody's making money. Yeah, the mammon. So let's start with the weather. We have talked about the weather, that there are some people who are thinking, oh yeah, the one who controls the weather will control the world. Yeah, this is the Dallas, Texas weather history of 1963, and I happened to be there is no data recorded, and I said, shall I move on? And then I found an almanac, and it says, yeah, got some quotes for you. You see, dates. Oh, the mean temperature was 63 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature happened to be 71 degrees Fahrenheit for a November day. That's quite, that's quite interesting. Okay, 71.7 degrees Fahrenheit. That's quite warm for November. And some people think, okay, then I can drive a cabriolet, a convertible. Yeah, this is the former German Chancellor Angela Merkel driving with another politician in Germany with a convertible. Yeah, and she's wearing a pink suit. Yeah, so that is almost the same configuration what happened on November the 22nd in Dallas. Most likely this is happened to be here from a movie. I don't think that is an original photograph, but that's not the point. The point is that also John F. Kennedy was riding in a convertible. Yeah, there were many, many things happening on that day. But imagine if there would be thunder and rainstorm and blizzards and rain pouring. John F. Kennedy could have not been shot allegedly from a warehouse, wouldn't he? So maybe you think that, oh, starting the research on John F. Kennedy, this guy is totally nuts. Let's look it up. There would be far more easy things to do to kill a president than to shoot him from a 6th floor in the back for a target which is moving away from you. So people or assassins or killers, they would have made it quite easily just to drop a grenade into that car, for example, from a bus, or to shoot somebody from a 5-foot distance here. If you see that young lady here, maybe you see that this young lady, we don't know what she's carrying in her bag here, just assuming. And so it is a hard time for me believing that everything was a coincidence, that somebody says, now I have to get rid of that president and I'm doing it from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. Why it had to happen that way is a very interesting question, and there is a big reason for doing so. But you have to wait almost 10 sessions if we go into this, why it would happen in Dallas, why it would happen there, and why it would happen that way. But you see that to be quite clear on that occasion, if somebody would have the interest of killing the president was not well protected, especially not on that day. Crowds of people waving at the president during a procession. Yep, a procession through downtown Dallas. Oh my. You see, the president has very naive kind of way sometimes, I think. Yeah, you see that if you see that picture here from when he's having his mic or so, and when he's doing a speech, delivering a speech for any promotion, I don't know what year that is, but you see that this president was very naive when it came to protection. Wouldn't you say so? First of all, we know that he's suffered from a back injury since he was very young. Then he's standing on a chair. Yeah, and what's this guy doing here? Yeah? So if you really think that somebody would have to wait until Dallas trip of the United States president to get rid of him, I think there were much more easier ways to get rid of him in this crowd or anywhere else, but in Dallas during a motorcade on a promotion tour for the re-election of the presidency. Yeah, This is hilarious, that picture. You see that. Can you imagine now Joe Biden? Okay, it is questionable if Joe Biden would ever access that chair. But the problem is that you see that these were the days where people were very in touch with the audience, with the public, and not so distant like today. So it would be a very easy feat to get rid of Kennedy, one way or the other. Yeah, this is, by the way, this is also a vessel ship, John F. Kennedy. Yeah, which was christened, very interesting, by Jacqueline Kennedy. Huh? Yeah, so it has anything to do with war. And that ship was named after the 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, and was nicknamed Big John. And I said, stop. Because Big John happened to be the original title of the Pope. Yeah, you remember that fancy propaganda, anti-Catholic or anti-JFK propaganda, Big John and Little John, when Big John happened to be the Pope or Papa, and Little John happened to be John Kennedy. So when they now say that this ship here is now nicknamed Big John, it is not named after the United States president, but after the Pope. But I think that the majority of people won't get that, because they think that Big John, Little John is just a fancy television series. Yeah, but also could be a remark that it is happening, that it has been christened to the Pope. It has been christened. Huh? Is it in the Bible somewhere depicted that you christian ships? I don't think so. There were many presidents around who happened to travel in open cars, but there are some cars who had a protection. And these presidential cars are being called presidential state cars. And as John F. Kennedy knew, there were some people behind him because he had many enemies. One to name would be Allen Dulles, just one to name, one to mention. There were several presidential limousines. If you were to compare them, 1961, it's called Lincoln Continental SS100X. Then 1972, that was the car that Carter was using. I think it was Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan was using. And since Obama, it's called the Beast. You see that your American president is not the most powerful man in the world. If he would be the most powerful man in the world, then, of course, for example, Donald Trump, who once had this office, could have released the classified files for John F. Kennedy, but he couldn't. Yeah, so therefore, don't get me the fact that the president of the United States has something to do with the most powerful man of the world. Yeah, there must be somebody more powerful to forbid Mr. Trump to open the files. So what's it all about? What's my point? My point is the SX100X Lincoln, because it became part of the history with the JFK tragedy. He was riding in the car during the motorcade, riding in a specially built presidential parade car. That's it. And out of a sudden, look here, there's a protective bubble cover. Oh, it wasn't used in Dallas. If it is correct that Lee Harvey Oswald shot the president 3 times, then that would at least cover some, at least give some protection for the president, doesn't it? Huh? A protective bubble in place. But in Dallas, it was not equipped. Once again, Dallas is the place where he was assassinated, and JFK was driving in a Lincoln. Huh? Interesting, huh? Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln happened to be the premier mark of Ford companies, Ford automobiles. Yeah? Kennedy shot in a Lincoln made by Ford. Lincoln shot in the Ford Theater. Yeah, it's very interesting coincidences here. So it's been called JFK's SS100X Lincoln. Very interesting. There were many people around in convertibles, many rulers of very big powers, nations, etc. Yeah, you see once again, this is of course the lunatic Austrian leader. Happened to be many people misunderstand him as a German. He was not German, he was an Austrian. He was German speaking, but an Austrian, by the way. He was driving in the convertible, but there are many people around for his protection, many soldiers. Yeah, and he's wearing a soldier uniform also. This is during a procession. This is John F. Kennedy riding in an open convertible, but with a protective bubble in place to protect him from rain, moisture, and maybe some bullets from behind. Yeah, and during a procession, Brett. What's a procession? Procession is a ceremonious solemnity, a religious procession, the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. So when it is during a procession, then these kings of the world are being held like idols. For me, it is quite obvious if you because he's one of the supremes. You see, he's erased on that. He's standing in a limousine, and he's greeting the people, and the people are waiting them. So you see that the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem. And I think there were many admirers of JFK or of any politicians, if you think about that people idolizing other people instead of giving praise to the King of Kings, Jesus Christ. Yeah, otherwise, you see that the first Samuel would be incorrect, but then people said, give us a king that he is ruling us like the pagans. Yeah, and so they get their kings who are ruling them like the pagans. Yeah, then they worship the kings like gods. Of course, they are pagans. Yeah. And I think that there is no coincidence that it's called the SS-100X, because that was built in 1961. That was built, it's no coincidence, it is built in the very month, Brett, that John F. Kennedy took his oath for presidency. And if we know the 100-year discrepancy or difference between Lincoln and Kennedy, then it is a very strange coincidence that that car has been named SS-100X because there is just one car and not 100 cars. So could it be that there is something to it for the 100 years that they were comparing Lincoln to Kennedy? And you know that, of course, Lincoln was assassinated. And now, of course, you know that Kennedy was assassinated as well. And they did not equip that so-called protective bubble resistance in place. Therefore, the Secret Service decided not to put it up. Huh? Interesting. Yeah, so there were several occasions when it was not put up, but here on that instance here, for example, you see that there were at least 2 Secret Service agents riding on the back of the car to get a little bit of protection for the president if he would have made if somebody would have made an attempt to attack the president from behind. Step plates on the rear allowed Secret Service agents to stand and ride, and not only on the back. There were several functions on an automobile to give protection to the president. This is the maximum protection. You got a protective glass bubble, and you got 5, and I reckon that could be 6 here. 5 or 6 agents accompanying the presidential limousine so that it is very hard to get through the president. And the job of these people, of course, is to protect the president at all cost or at any cost, meaning to get shot for the president. And this limousine has carried the District of Columbia license plate GG300, and there's a special reasons why that this license plate is been mentioned that way, but I think that we will spare that for a later session. The bubble top has been also the name, the complete name of the presidential Lincoln Mercury limousine in 1950 for Mr. Eisenhower. So that very car has been named after the bubble top. So that was not just something which was new or something which was uncommon, but that very car has been mentioned bubble top. So it is very strange that all the protection that the president could have had on that very day in Dallas was not equipped, or simply was not being ordered, or simply failed. Or was there a reason to fail? Also, the hydraulic rear seat on that limousine could be raised to about 10.5 inches to elevate the president. Yeah, you see that a standing target is much more easier to hit than a sitting target, for example. So people would have had a very easy feat to shoot the president when he's standing in a car, but it didn't happen. It only happened on the 22nd of November. Yeah, and this presidential limousine was then at the Parkland Hospital after the attack, and then carried away to a Hercules military airplane, and then was driven with a police escort directly to the White House garage. And then the car remained in seclusion with high security while federal agents and Secret Service investigators examined it extensively. Aha, but you won't get any clues of that because it is the Secret Service covering anything up. Yeah, and this is a SS-100X. SS stands for Secret Service. 100 could not mean the model of that car because it's just one made. And X, you see that in your code, is a rejection of Christ. But 100 could also mean that Mr. Kennedy was 100 years after Mr. Lincoln in the Congress. So otherwise, what does the 100 mean? So that is my clue on it, or my suggestion of it. The Secret Service agent tried their best to clean the interior and did a pretty good job, yeah, in destroying evidence. But there were still signs of the trauma when it arrived at Hess and Eisenhardt. So that's the builder of the car. Hess went to Washington himself, said we had worked on that car. We had a personal pride in it. Hess felt that if the president had used the removable bubble top, he might not have been killed. Yeah, might not have, but had been killed. Hess was named a consultant to the Warren Commission, which was appointed by President Johnson, so the runner-up president, to investigate the assassination. Interesting, huh? The President Johnson to investigate the assassination, Brad, means the Surrey Military Knight of Malta, President Johnson, to investigate the attack. Interesting. S-M-O-M.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I don't think that you come across that on mainstream or somewhere else. That also this guy was a Knight of Malta.
Oh, of course not, Michael. Why would they want the people to know that?
Yeah.
The point is people have to do their own research to find these things out, like you did.
Yeah.
You found out that he was knighted, and so was another famous president of the United States after Kennedy. Reagan was knighted as a honorary Knight of Malta after he served at the very end of his presidency. Why is it that all of these things happen at the end of presidencies? Like, what was it, 2015? Who was president? Oh, yeah, Barack Obama. Who was vice president? Oh, yeah, Joseph Biden. Oh, what happened in 2015? Oh, Pope Francis, our friend, the Jesuit, No, he's not our friend.
No,
Pope Francis came to speak to joint session of Congress. And what did our country do at that time? Nothing but praise. That's all they gave the Pope, because he's, the head of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, of course. You got it everywhere. If you know how these people are connected, they get their reward then that they had did service to Rome.
There you go.
There you go.
So it's very interesting. You pointed out earlier, Michael, that the SS, the Secret Service of the United States, did not install the bubble on the car on that day. That what would we call it? A fateful day there in November 11.
But we will also face the fact that also no presidential bodyguard.
November 22nd. I'm sorry, it's November.
No presidential bodyguard was protecting the president also. So he was absolutely without any protection at all at that very time when he was assassinated. You see that these people are all in secret orders. We will run constantly into secret orders from now on. This Coach Peter Hess spoke to the Cincinnati Rotary Club. You see, the Rotary Club belongs to the Freemason and describes the Secret Service 100X as, quote, the most fabulous automobile built in this decade, unquote. The problem is that it is not the fault of the automobile. It's the fault of the purpose of the people that this killing, in my humble opinion, in my research, happened on purpose.
Of course. Well, that's the thing, Michael, is that, again, we have more evidence of doublespeak. You tell the people one thing, but the reality is completely different. And the reality is showing you that the common knowledge is a flat out lie. They flat out lied to the American people. Oh yeah, see, and we've gotten so used to it that that's what we come to expect now, isn't it?
Yeah,
We
you see that
expect lies.
you don't have any protection in that car. Especially, okay, there is a glass. There's a glass cover here, but you see that you're sitting on you're sitting on a couch, but that's it. And in 1960s they don't had any seat belts also, so you see that it's totally hilarious that somebody would take the risk of riding in an open vehicle during a motorcade. But yeah, it was just for publicity, huh? So that was that with that car. You see several things for that car for protection, but nothing was equipped on that very day. Not one. Not one. And as you mentioned then, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, very famous to have conspired with the Pope. At least that's what Time magazine tells us. Yeah, and also these people then will be venerated as idols. Oh my, the Holy Alliance. Yeah, the Holy Alliance between Reagan and Pope Paul II for the Polish.
So-called Protestant president, eh?
Yeah, February 1992, 30 years ago. Yeah. It is not my choice of words. It's not my choice of words.
It's a flat-out lie, Michael. It's a flat-out lie what they tell you, and they expect you to believe it, and people just want to keep regurgitating the lie. They don't want to tell you the truth, so you don't ever get to hear the truth, and then you're all surprised when someone tells you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's their fault for telling you, isn't it? Yeah, that's right.
It's not my choice of words. You see the conspiracy between church and state on that regard, huh? Church and state conspiracy in 1992 or 1982. Here they rely on the visit of 1982. So what do you expect 40 years after that, huh? What do we expect? And he was assassinated as well, or both of them were assassinated. And Pope John, then he was assassinated in an open car. And Reagan, who was assassinated in front of a car, or besides a car, actually. Yeah, but on that example of Reagan, there was alleged bodyguard who then was been hit by the shot. So Mr. Reagan was protected. Now that is very interesting when you compare that, because in the case of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, they tell you there was a so-called single bullet theory or so-called magic bullet theory, which went through Mr. Kennedy and then got into Mr. Connolly and then exited, and then it has also created another wound. Yeah, so by unbelievable luck, only the bodyguard of Reagan was hit, but not Reagan himself. Because if that would be another magic bullet, Brett, then it would have hit Reagan also. Sorry.
Well, you know, Reagan is an actor, and so is John Paul II, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, they're all
in
actors.
this case. Yeah. Because what did the Pope do? He forgave the shooter. You remember this?
Yeah, I know.
So, in other words, yeah, you figure it out for yourself. We're not here to figure
No. But the case is, you see that in the case of Kennedy, it was a magic bullet who went through the president and then wounded severely another one. So John Connolly, the then governor of Texas in 1963. But when the bodyguard was then protecting Mr. Reagan was protected. It was no magic bullet. Yeah, smoking gun. Oh, there are so many hilarious things. If you really want to use your common sense, you can laugh away many of the claims. When I see Mr. Brzezinski mentioned, then my alerts are on absolutely maximum.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You see, there is also there's always a combination from church and state. Yeah, so these are Polish workers. What do they doing here? Huh? What are they doing here? It looks like a religious service here. Oh my. Religious service, yeah. Yeah, William Casey, CIA. CIA chief. Yes, a very interesting article, not going into this article now here, but it's a very interesting article. And we're talking about 30 years ago, and things are getting worse, 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 and much more worse. Holy Alliance. In that meeting, Reagan and the Pope agreed to undertake a clandestine campaign to hasten the dissolution of the communist empire, declares Richard Allen, Reagan's first national security advisor. This was one of the greatest secret alliances of all time, unquote. Church and state combined. There was a concern, if you remember well from a few sessions ago, Brad, there was a concern of the American public that Mr. JFK could work together with the Vatican, and Kennedy himself said, I'm not the Catholic candidate for presidency. Yeah, and what do we see here? Now we are then 20 years after Mr. Kennedy, then Mr. Ronald Reagan, an actor by himself, was greeting the Pope, and they have made clandestine campaigns and Holy Alliance, according to the Time magazine. Yeah, so times are changing. In 1982 or 1990, nobody was concerned anymore. But in 1960, it was a very big issue with the campaign for the presidency of John F. Kennedy of his religion. Nobody asked Ronald Reagan about his religion when he's being depicted together with the Pope, and then people are putting it up that he did a clandestine campaign together with the papacy. Yeah, how you can see how Roman Catholicized your country is nowadays, huh? He's also facing the obelisk as his inauguration speech, and he's welcoming the Pope with a handshake. Well, you see, the handshake also means a contract, huh? Yeah, these are all no coincidences. So please be cautious of any documentaries. How many shots, how many things, how many frames, how many people, how many witnesses you see. You cannot prove anything. You have to use your common sense.
Well, in this day and age, Michael, it seems to me that most of our friends and colleagues and acquaintances have forgotten what common sense is. Because it's so much easier to go along with what everyone else is doing and saying, and then you don't have to really think for yourself now, do you? Life's pretty easy when you get it all handed to you on a silver platter, isn't it?
Yeah. Obey. Simply obey orders. Now we're speaking of a killing here. We're speaking of a killing of an American president in the open. So he was not secretly poisoned or so. He was killed in the open. So that made a statement that somebody is more powerful than the president of the United States. And we will find out what's it all about. It's because once again, if I show you these pictures here of the visiting of the Pope, July the 2nd, so 5 months before, or 4.5 months actually before the assassination took place, you see here the things about the most powerful man in the world, huh? When John F. Kennedy is sitting on a small chair here, receiving conversation with the Pope. And Jacqueline Kennedy kneeling down in front of the Pope. See, all the things are going on behind the curtain. So, for example, here when I spoke about the SMOM, Reinhard Gehlen happened to be also Knight of Malta like Alan Dulles and Lyndon B. Johnson, and all they are in the same boat or in the same league. They're all in the same league. The CIA, Nazi connections and all the things. You see, all is the same. Just people are just exchanging their uniforms. For example, a certain CIA director called Leon Edward Panetta, who was also a United States representative from California, served under President Bill Clinton as the Director of Management and Budget and as the White House Chief of Staff, etc., etc. So, but he was a chief of the CIA. In 2009, with Barack Obama, he was nominated as the Director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Look up what he's got to say. As a director of the CIA, Panetta oversaw the operation that brought down Osama bin Laden. Oh, that's very interesting, and it's also to be questioned. What do you mean by bringing down Osama bin Laden? Quote, I needed all of the Jesuit grace and blessings I could get in order to survive in Washington. That's an official statement in front of a university. He says, I needed all the power and blessings I could get from the Jesuits in order to survive in Washington. So that means, that's my explanation.
Yep.
That's my explanation. If you don't survive in Washington, of course, you die in Washington. If you don't have the blessings of the Jesuits, you do not survive in Washington. That's my explanation of it. So to survive in Washington, you need to have the blessings of the Jesuits. So the Jesuits are running Washington. And I'm talking about Washington, D.C. I'm not only talking about the mayor of the city of Washington also. He says, I needed all of the Jesuit grace and blessings to survive. Otherwise, he would have not survived. So the Jesuits are running Washington. That's what he is admitting as a CIA chief. So you don't have to assume or conspire or something else. No, he's telling you right away in that video, CIA boss Leon Panetta, I needed all of the Jesuit grace and blessings to survive in Washington, quote unquote.
Yep, that's straight from the horse's mouth, Michael, as we say.
So what makes you think that in 1960 the tables were turned? The CIA happened to be founded by Knights of Malta. I quoted now William bin Donovan and Reinhard Gehlen. So once again, please let me warn you about any documentaries, because they will not ever put out the religious ties of John F. Kennedy and the circumstances of his assassination. Everything is about the murderer, everything is about technique, everything is about number of bullets. And once again, it is not interesting that who's killed him and how, but what for. And so people really think that that opened their eyes really have not been awakened, because everything has a spiritual and a religious, therefore, background. So therefore, I'm just only quoting documentaries when it comes down to certain facts, but I would not recommend anything, because people will exclude valuable information at any cost. Maybe they also want to avoid being killed as Kennedy. But we are speaking here about the real conspiracy. We are speaking here about that John F. Kennedy had so powerful enemies that they got aware, so that Kennedy had such powerful enemies that even they got away with the assassination. So nobody was jailed, nobody was questioned. The people who really were behind that assassination and who is really a part of a big government organization must know who is behind that assassination. And it is not Lee Harvey Oswald, it is not Jack Ruby, and it is also not Lyndon B. Johnson. But we will have to go into Lyndon B. Johnson to find out the ties. Yeah, so Kennedy had made so many enemies by signing a memorandum that the troops have to get out from Vietnam, and therefore the military complex, the industry, etc. So they were facing big losses because, yeah, of course, the industry and military complex is a very big task, very high profitable business in the United States. So Oswald is just a patsy. Everything I come across Oswald, I'm quite convinced what it's all about. And I know that there are so many things going on also in Vietnam who had also ties about the killing of Kennedy. With the overthrow and execution of Ngo Diem is very much underestimated, but we will handle that later on. Yeah, there were many people who want to really get rid of Kennedy because, yeah, he was destroying their business. He was destroying their financial profit. That's the oil industry on the one hand, the military industrial complex on the other hand. So many people
you're
in the
talking about so much more than that. You know, how about the people discover for themselves what Kennedy did during his lifetime, such as creating a silver-backed dollar and getting out of the Federal Reserve?
Mm. Yeah.
Talk about, you know, someone at war with the powers that be. Kennedy took the torch up and started to, you know, really hurl down some serious blows against the mammon. And you can't do that without consequences. That's the fact, because they're just too powerful. These men are too powerful that run the Federal Reserve. You cannot expect that you're going to have any success with that. You're just up against some power that you have no idea.
Yeah, there are too many of them also. You see, the entire government has been filled with people who serve different interests. They are not only members of the Senate or members of the Parliament.
These are private interests that the public don't know about.
Yes, that's for example of Lyndon B. Johnson. He was everything. He was not only the vice president or then the president in charge. He was not a member of a politician party only. He was also a Knight of Malta, and he happened to be also a Freemason. So he was everything. He was just interested in his own personal benefit. And you see, if you ask somebody who benefited directly from the assassination of Kennedy, the first answer obviously must be Lyndon B. Johnson. That's absolutely natural. That is common sense. And so it is very interesting to roll up the Kennedy assassination from a religious standpoint of Lyndon B. Johnson in the future. But before we could do that, I would like to hand over in the next session a very interesting example that you really see that this very strange assassination which took place in Dallas was anything but coincidence. So this is the very interesting and important news here, and not who killed, who shot, who said, and everything else. You see that these are not your regular politicians. These people serve other interests. Yeah, look for yourself where you will find that information that Lyndon B. Johnson was a sovereign Knight of Malta. Please look up the information where you can find that information. You won't find the information on the mass media that Mr. Lyndon B. Johnson was handing over the Grand Cross of the Order of the Knights of Malta. And even if people would not tell you what that means the absolutely allegiance to the Pope and to their Jesuits as well. So that is the very important news, and that's what I would like to do in the future for the Kennedy assassination, that you really see that there is no diversion between church and state, no difference, no anything else, but these people are so powerful and powerful positions because they serve the papacy for a special purpose. Yeah, so that's the conclusion of the session. And also would like to hand it over to my beloved brother Brett to close it down. So in the next session, we will go into another subject, which also happens to be quite similar to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Thanks very much for having me. Please read your Bible, and Maranatha.
Thank you, Michael, for putting this information together for us. And as Michael has pointed out, you don't find this in the mainstream articles. You find it in the Catholic articles where they are grooming and they are promoting their own. And that's how they get away with this easily, is because the people actually want to encourage the different religions, but do they understand the doctrine? This is the question. Do we really understand our doctrine like we should? We should all be asking this question. And that's one of the main reasons my channel and my work exists on YouTube, is for this purpose. Educate yourself. Don't be left out in the cold. And you can only do it by doing some of your research and verification on your own, and study with the people that you know and love. And with that, we'll catch up with you next time. Looking forward to that, Michael. God bless and Maranatha.